Good day, sir. Good day, class. Today, my report is all about the developmental theories and the theories related to the learner's development. First, we have Sigmund Freud, 3 components of personality and 5 psychosexual stages of development. The second, we have Piaget, 4 stages of cognitive development. The third is Erikson 8 psychosocial stages of development. The fourth is Kohlberg's 3 levels and 6 sub-stages of moral development. The fifth is Vygotsky's on language and sono-proximal development. And the last is von Penberner's bioecological system. Now, we go back to Sigmund Freud. In Freudian theory, the human mind is structured into 2 main parts, the conscious and the unconscious mind. The conscious mind includes all the things we are aware of or can easily bring into awareness. The unconscious mind, on the other hand, includes all the things outside of our awareness, all of the wishes, desire, hope, urges, and memories that lie outside of awareness yet continue to influence behavior. Freud compared the mind to an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg that is actually visible above the water represents just a tiny portion of the mind, while the huge expanse of ice hidden underneath the water represents the much larger unconscious. In addition to these main components of the mind, the Freudian theory also divides human personality up into 3 major components, which is the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is the most primitive part of the personality. That is the source of all our basic urges. This part of the personality is entirely unconscious and serves as the source of all libidinal energy. It is called pleasure principle because its presence at birth. The ego is the component of personality that is charged with dealing with reality and helps ensure that the demands of the id are satisfied in ways that are realistic, safe, and socially acceptable. The ego is called the reality principle. Its defense mechanism develops around the age of 2. Now we go to the superego. Superego is the part of the personality that holds all of the internalized morals and standards that we acquire from our parents, family, and society at large. It is called the morality principle. Now we go to the psychosexual development. Freudian theory suggests that as children develop, they progress through a series of psychosexual stages. At each stage, the libido's pleasure-seeking energy is focused on a different part of the body. The first is the oral stage. The libidinal energy are focused on the mouth. The anal stage is the second one. The libidinal energy is focused on the anus. The phallic stage is the libidinal energies are focused on the penis or clitoris. The fourth is the latency stage, a period of calm in which little libidinal interest is present. The fifth is the genital stage. The libidinal energies are focused on the genitals. The successful completion of each stage leads to a healthy personality as an adult. If, however, a conflict remains unresolved at any particular stage, the individual might remain fixated or stuck at that particular point of development. A fixation can involve an over-dependence or obsession with something related to that phase of development. For example, a person with an oral fixation is believed to be stuck at the oral stage of development. Signs of an oral fixation might include excessive reliance on oral behavior such as smoking, biting fingernails, or eating. And next is Jean Piaget's stages of cognitive development. The concepts of Piaget's stages of development, along with the stages of development, Piaget's theory has several other main concepts, which is the schemas. The schemas are thought processes that are essentially building blocks of knowledge. A baby, for example, knows that it must make a sucking motion to eat. That is schema. Second one, assimilation. Assimilation is how you use your existing schemas to interpret a new situation or object. For example, a child seeing a skunk for the first time might call it a cat because Kasi nga doon sa iskema niya naka-instill yung yung tawag dito, yung picture nung cat, which is yun yung unang pumasok sa logical thinking niya. Yun yung naipakilala kaya sa kanya. Dito sa assimilation, pag nakakita siya ng kaparehong itsura ng cat, may isip niya yun na kahit hindi siya cat, yun ang may isip niya, cat. Ngayon naman, dito tayo sa accommodation. Accommodation is what happens when you change a schema or create a new one to fit new information you learn. The child accommodates when they understand that not only four-legged creature are cats. Ayun na. Dumadating dito naman sa accommodation nga. Pag nakakita na ng dahil nga kumbaga naiintindihan na niya na hindi lahat ng may four legs and tsaka may balahibo makakategory na cat. Dito na yung pumapasok yung word na accommodation. Now, we go to the equilibrium. It happens when you are able to use assimilation to fit in most of the new information you learn. So, you're not constantly adding new schemas. Ayun daw yung yung equilibrium. Now, we go to the PJ 4 stages of cognitive development, which is the sensory motor stage. During the early stages, according to PJ, infants are only aware of what is right in front of them. They focus on what they see, what they are doing, and physical interaction with their immediate environment. Because they don't yet know how things react, they constantly experimenting. They shake or throw things, put things in their mouth, and learn about the world through trial and error. The later stages include goal-oriented behavior that leads to a desired result. Between ages 7 and 9 months, infants begin to realize that an object exists, even though they can no longer see it. The important milestone known as object permanence. Dito na sa stage ng sensory motor stage nga, doon natin makikita yung word na object permanent. It is a sign that memory is developing. After infants start crawling, standing, and walking, they increase physical mobility, leads to more cognitive development. Near the end of the sensory stages, 18 to 24 months, infants reach another important milestone, early language development, aside that they are developing some symbolic abilities. Now, we go to the pre-operational stage. During this stage, toddler through age 7, young children are able to think about things symbolically. Their language use become more mature. They also develop memory and imagination, which allows them to understand the difference between past and future and engage in make-believe. But their thinking is based on intuition and still not completely logical. They cannot yet grasp more complex concepts such as cause and effect, time, and comparison. Now, again, we go to the concrete operational stage. At this time, elementary age and pre-adolescent children age 7 to 11 show logical concrete reasoning. Children's thinking become less focused on themselves. They are increasingly aware of external events. They begin to realize that their own thoughts and feelings are unique and may not be shared by others or may not even be part of reality. But during this stage, most children still can think abstractly or hypothetically. Now, we go to the formal operational stage. Adolescents who reach this fourth stage of intellectual development, usually at age 11 plus, are able to use symbols related to abstract concepts such as algebra and science. They can think about things in systematic ways, come up with theories, and consider possibilities. They also can ponder abstract relationships and concepts such as justice. Although PJ believed in lifelong intellectual growth, he insisted that the formal operational stage is the final stage of cognitive development. He also said that continued intellectual development in adult depends on the building of knowledge. Now we go to Exxon Psychosocial Theory of Development. First, the stage 1. The psychosocial crisis is trust versus mistrust. The first stage of Erickson's theory of psychosocial development occurs between birth to 18 months of age. And it is the most fundamental stage in the life because an infant is utterly dependent. Developing trust is based on the dependability and quality of the child's caregivers. At this point in development, the child is utterly dependent upon adult care for everything they need to survive, including food, love, warmth, safety, and nurturing. If a caregiver fails to provide adequate care and love to the child, it will come to feel that they cannot trust or depend upon the adults in their life. The outcome is, if a child successfully develops trust, the child will feel safe and secure in the world. Caregivers who are inconsistent, emotionally unable, or rejecting contribute to feeling of mistrust in the children under their care. Failure to develop trust will result in fear and a belief that the world is inconsistent and unpredictable. The maladaptation on this stage is sensory maladjustment. Meaning ng sensory maladjustment, it is overly trusting, even gullible. This person cannot believe anyone would mean them harm and will use all the defenses at their command to find an excuse for the person who did them wrong. The malignancy is withdrawal. It is characterized by depression, paranoia, and possibly psychosis. No child is going to develop a sense of 100% trust or 100% doubt. Erikson believed that successful development was all about striking a balance between the two opposing sides. When this happens, children acquire virtue of hope, which Erikson described as an openness to experience tempered by some awareness that danger may be present. Now, we go to the stage 2. The psychosocial crisis is autonomy versus shame and doubt. The second stage of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development takes place during early childhood, between 18 months to 3 years old of age, and it is focused on children developing a greater sense of personal control. The role of independence. At this point in development, children are just starting to gain a little independence. They are starting to perform basic actions on their own and making a simple decision about what they prepare. By allowing kids to make choices and gain control, parents and caregivers can help children develop a sense of autonomy. Potty training. The essential theme of this stage is that children need to develop a sense of personal control over physical skills and sense of independence. Potty training plays an important role in helping children develop this sense of autonomy. Like Freud, Erikson believed that toilet training was a vital part of this process. However, Erikson's reasoning was quite different than that of Freud's Erikson believed that learning to control one's bodily function leads to feeling of control and a sense of independence. Other important events include gaining more control over food choices, toy preferences, and clothing selection. The outcome is children who struggle and who are ashamed for their accidents may be left without a sense of personal control. Success during this stage of psychosocial development leads to feeling of autonomy. Failure results in feelings of shame and doubt. The maladaptation on this stage is impulsiveness, a sort of shameless willfulness that leads you in later childhood and even adulthood to jump into things without proper consideration of your abilities. Yung sample dito, yung nagiging compulsive buyers, yung isang tao pagka nagkaroon siya ng maladaptation dito sa sa stage ng psychosocial na to. Ang malignancy niya is compulsiveness. The compulsive person feels as if their entire being rides on everything they do, and so everything must be done perfectly. Nagiging perfectionist naman yung isang tao pag nagkaroon ng malignancy sa ganitong psychosocial stage. Finding balance, children who successfully complete this stage feel secure and confident, while those who do not are left with a sense of inadequacy and self-doubt. Erikson believed that the achieving balance between autonomy and shame and doubt would lead to the virtue of willpower or determination, which is the belief that children can act with intention within reasons and limits. The third stage is psychosocial crisis is initiative versus guilt. The third stage of psychosocial development takes place during the preschool years 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 years old. At this point in psychosocial development, children begin to assert their power and control over the world through directing, play, and other social interaction. Children who are successful at this stage feel capable and able to lead others. Those who fail to acquire these skills are left with a sense of guilt, self-doubt, and lack of initiative. The outcomes are the major theme of the third stage of psychosocial development is that children need to begin asserting control and power over the environment. Success in this stage leads to sense of purpose. Children who try to exert too much power experience disapproval, resulting in a sense of guilt. The maladaptation on this stage is ruthlessness. To be ruthless is to be heartless or be without mercy. They don't care who they step on to achieve their goals. The goals are the only things that matter, and guilty feelings and mercy are only sign of weaknesses. The malignancy is inhibition. The inhibited person will not try things because nothing ventured, nothing lost, and particularly nothing to feel guilty about. They are so afraid to start and take a lead on a project. They fear that if it fails, they will be blamed. When an ideal balance of individual initiative and a willingness to work with others is achieved, the ego quality known as virtue, of courage or purpose emerge. Now we go to the fourth stages of psychosocial crisis, which is the industry versus inferiority. The fourth psychosocial stages takes place during the school years from approximately age 6 to 12 years old. Through social interactions, children begin to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishment and abilities. Children need to cope with new social and academic demands. Success leads to a sense of competence, while failure results in feeling of inferiority. Outcomes: children who are encouraged and commended by parents and teachers develop a feeling of competence and belief in their skill. Those who receive little or no encouragement from parents, teachers, or peers with doubts their ability to be successful. Maladaptation on this stage is narrow virtuosity. We see this in children who aren't allowed to be children, the ones that parents or teachers put into one area of competence without allowing the interest of broader interests. These are the kids without a life: child actors, child athletes, child musicians, child prodigies. We all admire their industry, but if we look a little closer, they all have empty life. Yun naman ang totoo, 'di ba? Pagka yung mga, 'di ba, yung mga young artists na lalo na dito sa atin, 'di ba? Nakikita naman natin yung kumbaga wala silang yung magandang yung hindi nila yan kumbaga hindi nila na-experience maging bata talaga kasi nga more on nagwo-work sila, nasa limelight yung buhay nila. The malignancy on this stage is inertia. This includes who suffers from the inferiority complex. If they didn't succeed at first try, they don't even try it again. Successfully finding a balance at this stage of psychosocial development leads to the strength known as virtue of competence or competency. And these children develop a belief in their ability to handle the tasks set before them. The fifth stage is psychosocial crisis is ego identity versus role confusion. The fifth psychosocial stages takes place during the often turbulent teenage years, 12 to 18 years old. This stage plays an essential role in developing a sense of personal identity which will continue to influence behavior and development for the rest of a person's life. Teens need to develop a sense of self and personal identity. Success leads to an ability to stay true to yourself, while failure leads to the role of confusion and a weak sense of self. During adolescence, children explore their independence and develop a sense of self. Those who receive proper encouragement, and reinforcement through personal exploration will emerge from this stage with a strong sense of self-feeling of independence and control. Those who remain unsure of their beliefs and desire will feel insecure and confused about themselves and the future. Maladaptation on this stage is fanaticism. A fanatic believes that his way is the only way. Adolescents are, of course, known for their idealism and their tendency to see things in black and white. Malignancy is repudiation. To repudiate is to reject. They reject their membership in the world of adult. And even more, they reject their need for an identity. Some adolescents prefer to the groups that go against the norms to form their identity, such as religious cults, militaristic organization, group founded on hatred, and they may become involved in destructive activities, drugs or alcohol, or they may withdraw into their own psychotic fantasies. Erikson believed that each stage of psychosocial development was important. He placed a particular emphasis on the development of ego identity. Ego identity is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interaction and become a central focus during the ego identity versus role confusion stage of psychosocial development. Our personal identity gives each of us an integrated and cohesive sense of self that endures through our lives. Our sense of personal identity is shaped by our experiences and interaction with others. And it is this identity that helps us guide our action, beliefs, and behavior as we age. If you successfully negotiate this stage, you will have the virtue, as Erikson called, fidelity. Now we go to the stage 6. Psychosocial crisis is intimacy versus isolation. Young adults 18 to 30 years old need to form intimate, loving relationship with other people. Success leads to strong relationships, while failure results in loneliness and isolation. This stage covers the period of early adulthood when people are exploring personal relationships. Erikson believed it was vital that people develop close, committed relationship with other people. Those who are successful at this step will form relationships that are enduring and secure. Building on earlier stage, remember that each step builds on skill learned in previous steps. Erikson believed that a strong sense of personality identity was important for developing intimate relationship. Studies have demonstrated that those with a poor sense of self tend to have a less committed relationship and are more likely to struggle with emotional isolation, loneliness, and depression. The maladaptation on this stage is promiscuity, referring particularly to the tendency to become intimate too freely, too easily, and without any depth to your intimacy. Malignancy is exclusion, which refers to the tendency to isolate oneself from love, friendship, and community, and to develop certain hatefulness in compensation for one loneliness. Successful resolution of this stage results in the virtue known as love, if it marked by the ability to form lasting, meaningful relationship with other people. The stage 7 of psychosocial crisis is generativity versus stagnation. Adults 30 to 60 years old need to create or nurture things that will outlast them, often by having children or creating a positive change that benefits other people. Success leads to a feeling of usefulness and accomplishment, while failure results in shallow involvement in the world. During adulthood, we continue to build our lives, focusing on our career and family. Those who are successful during this phase will feel that they are contributing to the world by being active in their home and community. Those who fail to attain this skill will unproductive and uninvolved in the world. The maladaptation on this stage is overextension, caring too much for others or family. Some people try to be so generative that they no longer have time for themselves, for rest and relaxation. Nakikita naman natin talaga sa culture ng mga Pilipino yan, di ba? Yung mga magulang natin. Kahit na, kumbaga, may pamilya na yung mga anak nila, nag-ano pa rin, kumbaga, iniisip pa rin nila yung kapakanan, hindi na sa mga anak, pumupunta na sa mga apo. Yun yung ano nung at stage na to. The malignancy is rejectivity. Too little generativity and too much stagnation, and you are no longer participating in or contributing to society. This is the stage of midlife crisis. Sometimes men and women take a look at their lives and ask that big, what am I really doing this for? Yun yung mga question talaga ng mga yung mga older people na ito na yung kumbaga yung malignancy niya, yung parang rejecting na siya sa sitwasyon. Kumbaga ito na siya naman yung kumbaga yung kabaligtaran ng isa. Care is the virtue achieved when this stage is handled successfully. Being proud of your accomplishment, watching your children grow into adults, and developing a sense of unity with your life partner are important accomplishments of this stage. The last stage of psychosocial crisis is integrity versus despair. The final psychosocial stage occurs during old age, 60, end of life, and is focused on reflecting back on life. At this point in development, people look back on the events of their lives and determine if they are happy in their life that they live, or if they regret the things they do or didn't do. Nakikita naman natin na to sa mga sa mga senior citizen na sa mga family natin. Mostly lagi na lang silang nagkukwento ng mga kumbaga yung mga nakaraan nila. Ito na yung final stage. The mild adaptation on this stage is presumption. This is what happens when a person presumes ego integrity without actually facing the difficulty of old age. Malignancy is the state. The person becomes very negative and appears to hate life. Ito yung hindi kumbaga nagkaroon ng magandang sitwasyon sa ng pamilya niya. Nagkakaroon na ng yung kumbaga pag hindi niya ine-expect na nangyari sa all throughout ng stage ng buhay niya, at the end sa end life niya, meron siyang regret. Tapos ayun nga na siya, kumbaga yun yung sitwasyon na nagsisingkit sa isip niya na na hindi worth yung nabuhay siya. Ayun yung sitwasyon dito sa sa last stage. Erickson's theory differed from many others because it addressed development throughout the entire lifespan, including old age. Older adult needs to look back on life and feel a sense of fulfillment. Success at this stage leads to feeling of virtue, which is wisdom, while failure results in regret, bitterness, and despair. At this stage, people reflect back on the events of their lives and take stock. Those who look back on a life they feel was well lived, feel satisfied and ready to face the end of their life with a sense of peace. Those who look back and only feel regret will instead feel fearful that their lives will end without accomplishing the things they feel they should have. Yun na nga, yun na mention ko ng una, di ba? The outcome, those who are unsuccessful during this stage will feel that their life has been wasted and may experience many regrets. The person will be left with feeling of bitterness and despair. Then now we go to Kohlberg's theory of moral development. The level 1 is the pre-conventional. The earliest stage of moral development, obedience and punishment, are especially common in young children. But adults are also capable of expressing this type of reasoning. At this stage, Kohlberg says people see rules as fixed and absolute. Obeying the rules is important because it is a means to avoid punishment. At the individualism exchange stage of moral development, children account for individual points of view and judge action based on how they serve individual needs. In the Heinz dilemma, children argued that the best course of action was the choice that best served Heinz need reciprocity. It is possible at this point in moral development, but only if it serves one's interest. The level 2 is the conventional, often referred to as the good boy, good girl orientation, the stage of the interpersonal relationship of moral development. It is focused on living up to social expectation and roles. There is an emphasis on conformity, being nice, and consideration of how choices influence relationships. This stage is focused on maintaining social order. At this stage of moral development, people begin to consider society as a whole when making judgment. The focus is on maintaining law and order by following the rules, doing one's duty, and respecting authority. The third is post-conventional. The idea of a social contract and individual rights cause people in the next stage to begin to account for the differing values, opinions, and beliefs of other people. Rules of law are important for maintaining a society, but members of the society should agree upon this standard. Kohlberg's final level of moral reasoning is based on universal ethical principle and abstract reasoning. At this stage, people follow this internal principle of justice, even if they conflict with law and rules. Ang example na nabasa ko dito sa book na to Sir Martin Luther King, tsaka tsaka si Mother Teresa. Now, we go to the Vygotsky's social cultural development theory. When Vygotsky was a young boy, he was educated under a teacher who used the Socratic method. This method was a systematic question and answer approach that allowed Vygotsky to examine current thinking and practice higher level of understanding. This experience, together with his interest in literature and his work as a teacher, led him to recognize social interaction and language as two central factors in cognitive development, and his theory became known as the socio-cultural theory of development. Now, in my book, I have here Piaget and Vygotsky. Vygotsky worked on his theory around the same time as Piaget, in between the 1920s and 30s, but they had clear difference in their views about cognitive development. Piaget is more individual in focus, while Vygotsky is more social in focus. Piaget believed that there is universal. Vygotsky did not propose stages, but emphasizes on cultural stage factors in cognitive development. Piaget did not give much emphasis on language, but Vygotsky stressed the role of language in cognitive development. The social interaction. Vygotsky emphasized that effective learning happens through participation in social activities, making the social context learning crucial. Parents, teachers, and adults in the learner's environment all contribute to the process. The cultural factor is Vygotsky believed in the crucial role that culture played on the cognitive development of children. He looked into the wide range of experience that a culture would give to a child. For instance, on one culture's view about education, how children are trained early in life all can contribute to the cognitive development of the child. Language opens the door for learners to acquire knowledge that others already have. Learners can use language to know and understand the world and solve problems. Language can serve a social function, but it also helps the learner regulate and reflect on his own thinking. Now we go to the MKO, or more knowledgeable other. The more knowledgeable other is somewhat self-explanatory. It refers to someone who has a better understanding or a higher ability level than the learner with respect to a particular task, process, or concept. Although the implication is that the MKO is a teacher or an older adult, this is not necessarily the case. Many times, a child's peers or an adult's children may be the individual with more knowledge of experience. In fact, the the MKO need not to be person at all. Electronic tutor have also been used in educational setting to facilitate and guide students through the learning process. The key to MKO is that they must have or be programmed with more knowledge about the topic being learned than the learner does. Now, we go to the zone of proximal development. The concept of the more knowledgeable other is integrally related to the second important principle of Vygotsky's work, the zone of proximal development. This is an important concept that relates to the difference between what a child can achieve independently and what a child can achieve with guidance and encouragement from a skilled partner. Vygotsky sees the zone of proximal development as the area where the most sensitive instructions or guidance should be given, allowing the child to develop skills they will then use on their own, developing higher mental functions. Vygotsky also reviews interaction with peers as an effective way of developing skills and strategies. He suggests that teachers use cooperative learning exercises where less competent children develop with help from more skillful peers within the zone of proximal development. And now, the last is Penberner's ecological theory. Microsystem. The Penberner theory suggests that the microsystem is the smallest and most immediate environment in which children live. As such, the microsystem comprises the daily home, school, or daycare, peer group, and community environment of the children. Interaction with the microsystem typically involve personal relationships with family members, classmates, teachers, and caregivers. How these groups or individuals interact with the children will affect how they grow. Similarly, how children react to people in their microsystem will also influence how they treat the children in return. More nurturing and more supportive interaction and relationship with understandably foster the children improve development. One of the most significant findings that Yuri Penberner unearthed in his study of ecological system is that it is possible for siblings who find themselves in the same ecological system to experience very different environment. Therefore, given two siblings experience the same microsystem, it is not impossible for the development of them to progress in different manners. Each child's particular personality traits such as temperament, which is influenced by unique genetic and biological factors, ultimately have a hand in how he or she is treated by others. Now, we go to the mesosystem. The mesosystem encompasses the interaction of the different microsystems which children find themselves in. It is, in essence, a system of microsystem, and as such involves linkage between home and school, between peer group and family, and between family and community. According to Penberner's theory, if a child's parents are actively involved in the friendships of their child, for example, they invite their child's friend over to their house from time to time and spend time with them, then the child development is affected possibly through harmony and like-mindedness. However, the child's parents dislike their child's peers and openly criticize them, then the child experiencing disequilibrium and conflicting emotion, which will likely lead to negative development. Now, we go to the exosystem. Exosystem pertains to the linkage that may exist between two or more settings, one of which may not contain the developing children but affect them indirectly nonetheless. But based on the finding of Penberner, people and places that children may not directly interact with may still have an impact on their life. Such places and people may include the parents, workplaces, extended family members, and the neighborhood the children live in. For example, a father who is continually passed up for promotion by an independent boss at the workplace may take it out on his children and mistreat them at home. Now, the Microsystem. The Microsystem is the largest and the most distant collection of people and places to the children that still have significant influences on them. This ecological system is composed of the children's cultural patterns and values, specifically their dominant beliefs and ideas, as well as political and economic systems. For example, children in war-torn areas will experience a different kind of development than children in peaceful environments. Now we go to the Chrono System. The Penberner theory suggests that the Chrono System adds the useful dimension of time, which demonstrates the influence of both change and constancy in the children's environment. The Chrono System may include a change in family culture, address parent, and employment, as well as immense society changes such as economic cycles and wars. By studying the various ecological systems, von Penberner's ecological system theory is able to demonstrate the diversity of interrelated influences on children's development. Awareness of the context that the children can sensitize us to variation in the way children may act in different settings. For example, a child who frequently bullies smaller children at school may portray the role of a terrified victim at home. Due to this variation, adults who are concerned with the care of a particular child should pay close attention to his or her behavior in different settings, as well as to the quality and type of connection that exists between these settings. I hope what I have discussed for today will help us understand the different developmental theories. That's all for today, sir. Good day po. Thank you for listening.